Hey everyone, my name is Ned, and in this video I want to give you a tour of the survival story sets on the island before we completely say goodbye to it. This is something that I've been wanting to do ever since, I think, by the end of the Rockwell video. I wanted to make sure that at the end I sort of did everything else justice, or sort of, gave everyone a good idea of what these sets are, what they look like really, since it may not be entirely obvious, since some of them only show up for a very short amount of time. I guess we can sort of start off with the Fisherman's Village. This isn't going to be in any particular order, but I sort of want to just cover these as they come to mind. And so the Fisherman's Village, as you can see, it's pretty basic. It's pretty primitive. This was sort of the village that I came up with for Mei-Yin to meet the fisherman in, as she references a fisherman's village, and so that's exactly where they sort of meet for the first time right there, presumably. And you'll notice at the end of the Nerva video, it looks a little bit more advanced. There's a building right there and some fish baskets and some other stuff. And that's because sort of, the cinematic at the end of Nerva's video is quite far into the future. This is the save from before we did any of the, overgrown stuff where the new Legion compounds are overgrown and things like that. So moving on from the Fisherman's Village, we've got the, I guess you could say, village number 1. This is where Mei-Yin first comes across, her first main settlement. And I tried to do this justice as best as I could. I'm going to probably put up a sort of the note in question on the screen now, and you can be the judge of how well I did as far as trying to build this. It was me and another player named Snomwell, or Amy. I think it was just us two that built this, and it was really fun. Definitely, I think we sort of managed to nail the aesthetic of the note, at least as far as the the buildings sort of being attached to the mountain and gradually sort of being built up right up against it, and almost sort of on the side of the mountain. You'll notice there's a bunch of bodies here. So these were all dead bodies. Well, actually, they're not dead. They're perfectly alive, sort of. These are actually summoned players that you can summon with a sort of, if you summon them similarly to how you would summon a normal creature, you can actually just summon humans that never wake up, and you can dress them up and put armor on them and stuff. And so that's what we did for the bodies in the village. Okay, so moving on, we've got the village number 2, or it might be village number 3, and it should be right over here. Yeah, here we go. So this is, I forget if we called it village number 2 or 3. You'll notice the wall here is actually damaged. We never ended up repairing the gate here from when we blew it up in the one scene. But this is a village that Mei-Yin goes to. You'll notice this is going to be a reoccurring theme, and this might ruin the magic a little bit for some of you, in case you really like the survival stories and the sort of aesthetic that it creates, or the world that it builds. But a lot of these buildings don't actually have interiors. They're purely outdoor sets designed to look, like a cohesive place, just in the interest of everyone's time. Since we don't, if we don't need to show interiors, then we're not really going to build interiors. This is not always the case, but it's usually the case. You'll notice this village has a couple tames, some equus. I used to have some hyenodons that the villagers eventually gave to Mei-Yin as a reward for saving their town. Now, fun fact about this scene, we actually only had about 3 raiders. You'll notice in the Mei-Yin video, only about 3 people come crashing through this gate, and that was because we were super stumped on player count early on in the series. I didn't really have a whole lot of volunteers, but besides that, I think more importantly, I was just not as organized as I am now, and so because of that, it was a little harder to get large amounts of people. So moving on from that area, we've got Mei-Yin's house or settlement. We can actually, I'd say we should probably start over here. This is where she first starts building up her stuff. The tents are actually, or the tent is gone. I'm not sure if we had anything else here, but this is sort of the little area that she started to build up. I'll talk about that in a second. But this is sort of the area that she started to, this is like her original camp in my eyes. And so this is just, I'm always going to remember this spot as the place that Mei-Yin sort of just started to increase her numbers of raptors that she tamed. And then when it comes to the her house over here, this is just something I wanted to build just to show that she had, finally moved on. I think this is around the time when she was starting to do work for the fishermen and over here, and so I figured this spot would be fine. But yeah, it's very simple, very basic. There used to be a rock here, but I think it was destroyed at some point by a grenade or something. And so yeah, as you can see, we're starting off small, but that's intentional. I don't want to show the craziest stuff just yet. On a side note, I do want to clarify, this is actually a little area that we put all of Mei-Yin's creatures that we needed. You'll notice Nerva's just sitting here with a slingshot. So these are actually the backups. We created some backups of creatures that we would need to refer back to based on their color regions and things like that. Oh yeah, and then this is the camp that Mei-Yin had when Helena had met her for the first time. So this goes way back to the Helena video, actually. This is also another camp that they used sort of by the end, by the time Helena leaves. You'll notice this is not actually part of the ruins. With some of the ruins, I wanted to go ahead and sort of build on them to make them look less destroyed, less decayed, and so that was sort of the intention there. It didn't look amazing or anything. It was just a random little tiny detail. We've also got their camp right here as well, and so just tons of little camps of Helena and Mei-Yin scattered around that you'll notice in the survival stories. Okay, so moving on to bigger structures, we've got village number 3 or village number 4. I don't actually remember what we called this one. We didn't name them all entirely. Sometimes they were just generic village 02 or something. But this is probably going to look a little familiar. This is where Mei-Yin was talking to some people that were in blue armor. It probably wasn't shown extensively. For a lot of the builds, I didn't necessarily get inspiration from the notes, but for this one, I just saw this area and I really wanted to build something cool here. I wanted to build some place that sort of has bridges that go across, and so that was the idea here. And I really like how it turned out. Nova Star helped me with that. He's a good friend of mine, one of my previous patrons as well and players on my server. And yeah, I think it turned out really well. Okay, so moving on to the next sort of major settlement. This is the village that shows up briefly also in the Mei-Yin video. It's sort of similar to one of the older villages way back up over on the coast. Similar to the first village that Mei-Yin finds, this one's sort of it's got a bunch of dead bodies. It's being raided, or it has been raided. At the time, we didn't use mods, and so we just had fires everywhere. We just had campfires everywhere to light the fires, which looked really silly, but you probably didn't notice. Depends on how keen you were, how much you were paying attention to sort of where the fire was coming from. In the Nerva video, we did use, we've sort of upped our count of mods and what we're using, and I'll go into those in greater detail in a little bit. But yeah, this is sort of the idea with this one. Actually, I'm going to put up a note on the screen now. So this is what I was basing, this note is what I was basing the village off of. And so, you can also be the judge of whether I did a good job here. I think Amy also helped with this one as well. But yeah, the intention here was just to really, not just in this case, but with all of the mainly Mei-Yin notes, because Mei-Yin showed a bunch of the architecture. I really just wanted to replicate what she showed to the best of my ability to get it spot on. Of course, the locations are not at all specified in the notes, and so that's sort of just something I would randomly find spots for, based on the geography. Sometimes a place would come to mind as I was reading it, in fact, which was really helpful. Wait for this to load in. You may notice this. This is the Iron Brotherhood, and at least the Iron Brotherhood South settlement. And so the inspiration for this, we actually started building this just with this single frontal area in mind. And so I'll put up a note right on the screen here. And so you can notice this is one of Helena's notes. And you'll notice there's sort of like a shack on the left-hand side, and then there's a gate behind it to the right a little bit. And this is, I really wanted to make something with this. It had to include this, because presumably that's Helena's interpretation of what the Iron Brotherhood, at least a small section of what the Iron Brotherhood's settlement looked like. And she noticed how it looked kind of dreary, and how it was very boring, maybe, or I don't remember the exact details, but she noted how it was very just, everyone was very uniform, and it wasn't super happy or light. And so we sort of, I built this with the Chaos Shaman, and we wanted to go for something that looked a little rugged, but, just nothing crazy, nothing too happy. We added some graveyards here. You can pause the video and read these if you'd like. But yeah, a lot of little graveyard Easter eggs. And yeah, there you go. I really loved this area with the stairs and the ballista turret, and this overhang area was just awesome. We've got this compound area in the back here. We've got a deactivated turret. This is actually, so these inside sets weren't really used much, or well, the exterior sets, the inside of these exterior sets, they weren't used very much. But I'll show you what they were meant to be. So these two insides were actually meant to be, or these outsides, what looks like buildings, they were actually built over here. So we built the interiors completely offset, and we've done this for a few other builds. And so this is the one that has, we didn't actually end up using this section, the artifacts aren't actually accurate there, but we did end up using this section for when Helena's sort of looking at the Iron Brotherhood and their accomplishments, their artifacts, and of course the key that they got from the Broodmother. And so that was the idea here. I added some flexible cables just to add in some extra detail, nothing too crazy. And then right here we've got the barracks, and so the sleeping quarters. This was shown in like a single shot, nothing we used too much. Oftentimes I'm over preparing ridiculously, way more than we actually need. But I'm gonna try and sort of crack down on that and be more efficient next time. But nonetheless, I just really like building and more specifically building things to fit the lore. That's just super fun, and I think Chips really likes to do that too. So this place right here, this is Rockwell, Rockwell Manor V1. This was actually not, this was the idea for what Rockwell's Manor would sort of look like. It was just a prototype. You'll notice it's still here. I built this originally to serve as a set, pretty much one of the only sets for a teaser video for the survival stories. Before the Helena video, I ended up making a tiny little teaser that quite honestly sucked. It was really bad. And it had each of the four characters voiced. It had, Helena, Rockwell, Nerva, and Mei-Yin. Helena was voiced by Yanni Harris. Rockwell was voiced by a totally different person, as was Nerva and Mei-Yin. I even tried to voice Nerva myself. It was a really not a good trailer. Okay, it sucked. But nonetheless, it was sort of just a proof of concept, and I had, Rockwell walking in here, and you'll notice this is actually built on a ruin, and the idea, this goes back to, trying to build structures on top of the ruins. I just really wanted to, in the event that people saw these videos, I wanted them to imagine that the ruins that they see now on the island are, the leftovers of the structures that I was going to build. And so that was the idea there. But let me head on over to Rockwell Manor, to the real Rockwell Manor that we use, and you'll see sort of what's up here. So this is Rockwell Manor. I'm sure you've seen it quite a few times at this point. I've gotten a few questions about this RG platform. It's nothing special. I don't know necessarily why anyone's super thrilled about this. So it's really just a hexagon with the three triangle. I used some stone triangle foundations, and then I built just walls up from there, put some ceilings down, and then made some stairs come off here with some railings, and just a square ceiling there. Very basic. I just wanted sort of a really cool looking place for Archimedes to chill, since he was usually sitting here. So Rockwell Manor, you know, obviously Rockwell experimented on many things. He mentions experimenting on monkeys. Before reading too much into his notes, while I was planning the Helena and while I was making the Helena video, I didn't do enough research to actually realize that Rockwell does more experimentation inside of Rockwell Manor. And so these cages sort of just were a side effect of me, you know, not realizing that the cages were more so inside. As for the exterior set itself, you'll notice this looks very different to Rockwell Manor, and that, oh hey Nerva, and that is because this also uses an interior set, and so normally the doors are actually, you'll notice there really aren't any times when you actually see in the Rockwell video or in any video Rockwell, you know, leaving the manor and showing, you know, that, right? The interior set itself is very different. So the interior set is over here. You'll notice this looks like a sort of maze of death and just like a wizard tower of like what is all this stuff. Very, very bizarre, you know. So these, we had a lot of freedom with this. This allowed us to sort of make the interior look really good without having to worry about the exterior. So of course we've got our monkeys here. A lot of the Gigantopithecus are back at the exterior manor. This is the main living quarters. Nothing's actually in this door other than a random pipe. This is also weird looking. And then we've got the lab here. I think that's Ruby. That's just Helena, okay. Helena with ponytail, nice. So yeah, this is Rockwell's lab. And you may have noticed these canvases. These are actually illustrations from Rockwell's notes. I wanted to sort of have these here because I felt like it was really fitting to have Rockwell's, you know, little drawings here. And we've got some random traps, and that's really just about it. Oh yeah, and then we've got the sort of upstairs library here. It's hard to think about how this actually translates over to the, oh yeah, right, I forgot about this. This is the longer end, sort of the back end of Rockwell Manor. We've got some rooms in here, just with some beds. This is where Rockwell and his assistants sleep. And so, yeah, Chips did a really good job with this place. He built this whole sort of room and collections of rooms just up here. Okay, so now as for the painted sharks, you'll notice this looks really bizarre. This is after the painted sharks get completely decimated. This Mosschops has just been eternally sleeping there in pretty much every video. But this is sort of their camp. You've probably seen it a couple times if you've seen the survival stories. And I don't have the save on right now that shows what it looked like before it was destroyed, but you can sort of see that in the videos and sort of just imagine what it looked like as well. Now, as for Nerva's compound over here, this was built before Nerva's main compound, and it's really all we needed at the time before Nerva and Rockwell's videos. But because of it, we weren't really able to get that. I didn't really, you know, I didn't do a great deal at adding the sort of, you know, Roman Empire type appeal to this, you know, to this structure. It looks just sort of basic. We've got a weird rock situation here. I just kept that in, and yeah. So this is just one of the New Legion's outposts. Now, if we head over here, this is an interesting set. So this, you may notice, this used to be where the Blackthumb's village was. And if you remember from the Rockwell video, Rockwell came over here, he looked at some monkeys, you know, he was talking to the Blackthumb's people. And eventually the New Legion came and, you know, killed the leader of the Blackthumbs, and they took his people prisoner. And after that, they sort of just turned this village into their own. So this is now, you know, the New Legion's sort of new and improved Blackthumb's village. And this was done really on the fly. My team of body actors just helped out with sort of revamping this and turning it into a New Legion settlement. So that we did this pretty quickly, and then Ruby pretty much solely built this boat, which was meant to look like it was sort of just in construction, being built, and so she did a really good job with this as well. Okay, now since we're sort of near Herbivore Island, I guess I might as well just show the painted sharks. Oh, it's still on fire. Okay. So normally it's not on fire, but this is what we had to do to give the idea that the painted sharks were completely decimated. So you'll remember this if you've seen Helena's video. This is what happened to the painted sharks settlement eventually, but this is roughly what it looked like before being totally destroyed. And so yeah, it was just me and Chaos Shaman who built this, and generally the idea, we didn't have a whole lot of pointers. I just wanted to make them seem like a pretty happy tribe. We originally had boats for them, but I think they were sunk at some point. I don't entirely remember. Okay, before I show you Nerva's main compound, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, this is Nerva's original compound. This was sort of just a mock-up similar to Rockwell Manor V1. I wanted to just have something, I think that looks nice, but it's certainly not big enough to be called, to be even a main building for a compound. I wanted to go with something more on par with Rome, and something that looked more Roman. And so because of that, after meeting Chips, we sort of almost immediately got to work, as soon as we started on the Rockwell video, we got to work on this massive compound here, which is going to take a while to load in. And this is the New Legion's main final compound. This is tier 6, so we actually had multiple tiers of the compound, but this is the final finished product. We've got lots of decoration. This red building here was where they manufacture their guns and other, more advanced technology. They've got some tents here. This is Nerva's horse. We've got some raptors, some aloes. I'm not sure where the Yudi is. This building right here is fantastic. Chips built actually most of this. He built that building there. He also built the massive armory. Akuma and I built this stables, and then I think Chips also built this building, but it was a big group effort. Chips did most of the work, I would say. I think I do want to hopefully have a better, more consistent aesthetic with Scorched Earth. I do want to let Chips go wild and have a little bit more freedom. That way he doesn't have to worry about me combining these walls with his stuff. And we're going to be very careful and try and get it even better on Scorched Earth. So with that building out of the way, I'm going to head up north and we'll check out just a couple more buildings before I end the video. So this was a redwood village that I didn't show up for too long in the video, but this was just an example of a village that the New Legion ended up raiding. And this was really, Chips actually built this entire thing. Later, I just added some fire effects to make it look like they totally burnt the place down. And it might be a little hard to see in the redwoods, but I think Chips did a pretty good job here. It's just it's got an interesting aesthetic with lots of sort of circular shaped buildings. And we have like a ton of storage boxes in here. It's crazy. But yeah, that's that village. So we've got another Iron Brotherhood settlement here, and the story behind this settlement is actually by accident. So I actually didn't know that the Iron Brotherhood lived in the north. This is something that I only discovered when I read Rockwell's notes, which is why we're being extra careful with Scorched Earth, because in hindsight I would have only built this as the Iron Brotherhood settlement, and I wouldn't have built the one in the south, because Rockwell specifically says, a tribe to the northwest called the Iron Brotherhood. Whereas Helena doesn't even clarify which area it's in. And so thus, when I discovered that after reading Rockwell's notes, I had to, either retcon their building, retcon the Iron Brotherhood living there, or just build a secondary station, secondary compound up here. As you can see, it's a little bit different from the southern one. It seems maybe a little bit more advanced. We've got some tames here. I really like the Megalania. I forget who summoned that one in. Like many of the sets, this one's also sort of it doesn't actually have an inside. To go inside, we have to go over here. This is the actual interior set, and this is where, if you remember, Rockwell visits to take a look at the artifacts and to donate his own that he found. Before I show some more northern places, I did want to really briefly show the Golden Arrows meeting place neutral ground type area. We actually do use some mods, and going forward we will be using some mods, but only necessary ones that we absolutely need. These are carefully selected to make sure that they look like they could absolutely work in ARK and that they don't have some, bizarre aesthetic that just looks out of place. Wanted to make sure that they fit the Explorer notes. So the idea with this place is that it was just, an small abandoned little area. They built maybe it's got some kind of worshipping ground, and this serves as the neutral ground where the New Legion meets the Golden Arrows. Okay, now the Howling Wolves, right? I think this is the last major settlement, and the Howling Wolves actually have two compounds that we ended up building. And so the Howling Wolves up here, this is their, I guess you could say, their more so northeastern settlement, and this was the first one that we ended up building. Just happens to be a small settlement for them, not their main compound. We've got the Howling Wolves flag here that I ended up drawing myself. I don't think it's that great, but I think it does the job. It worked at the time, and yeah, it's pretty small. I built this all myself. It was a fun little place to build. Then we've got the main Howling Wolf settlement, which was almost entirely built by chips. I think Akuma and I helped as well a little bit with this one. This is a really fantastic build. I loved this part as well. Granted, I built this part, but it was really fun to sort of build this little dock area with the river. Having these little platforms attached to the trees was a really nice touch. Chips did an excellent job with this one. And yeah, I think this is probably one of my favorite settlements just because of its general aesthetic. I think it's really, really well done. So the last thing that I sort of forgot to show was actually the Rockwell Manor, I guess Rockwell's guest compound. And this one happens to just be right up on the mountain, right up above his manor. We built this. Chips actually built this, and I wanted to build this right on the ruins, just to serve as another one of those structures that happens to be built right on a ruins location. And we've got a random Carno sticking his head out of the roof, but. Yeah, you'll notice a lot of these just have random creatures in them. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this video. That's more or less all of the sets. I know this was probably a really long one. If you've watched the whole thing, thank you so much for checking it out. We had a lot of fun building these sets and trying to do our best to, add on to the existing island world and really fill it out, based on the lore. I think the team did a really great job with everything, with all of the builds. They each, stand out pretty well, and I as the person who edited and directed everything, I know all of these sets, inside and out. But as given that I don't have the perspective of a viewer, I'm not actually sure how memorable these sets were for you all. And so let me know in the comments, which ones you noticed the most while you were watching the survival stories, if any of them stood out to you. And yeah, other than that, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more survival stories. And with that being said, I will see you all in the next video. Bye everyone.